have this moment at the start of the show where the three of us pick our magic moments. The way things are going with the refereeing and the officiating, we could be picking our terrible moments or our imaginary moments. But I want to be positive and upful, so we'll stick with our magic moments. Darren, why don't you start? What was your magic moment of the weekend in the Premier League?
Well, Dan, hello, and good evening to everyone listening as
well.
You,
my friend.
I'm going to go outside of the Premier League for this weekend's magic moment because Jude Bellingham can do no wrong. First Classico, scores to equalise and then goes on to hit the winner. And he is a guy whose instinct is just, he's on fire at the moment. And we, at the moment, have two of the best players in world football, in Harry Kane, in Bayern Munich, and Jude Bellingham, who, it's not just the goals, it's the leadership, it's the wanting Zidane's shirt and then living up to all the hype. I never thought I'd say that £100 million for him plus would look like a bargain so quickly, but it already does.
Do you know what,
he's just
Danny,
that good.
if you were writing this as a book or as a Roy of the Rovers comic, you would go, come on, at least make it real.
Yeah.
at least make it realistic. You're taking the mick.
Here's a question for you, Danny, who displayed your wares in the middle of the pitch. Is it possible for a 20-year-old to be the best midfield player in the world?
Well, generally, I'd say no, but he is at the moment.
I think that's right.
He is at the moment the best. Although he is playing in that wonderfully free role that all great players love to play.
What great fun, isn't it, to play 10?
Yeah, it's like, I'll never forget that story when Souness said he went to manage Galatasaray. So he got all the players in individually, didn't he, to speak to them all about, their strengths and weaknesses, where they want to play. And he said he had 14 number 10s.
Well, you get the power of attack without the responsibility of defence, don't you?
Correct.
No doubt we'll talk more about Jude as the evening unfolds. Danny, what's your magic moment from the weekend?
Well, I think for me, I've banged the drum for him for a long time, and I think he gets a little bit of unfair criticism. I think he's a wonderful player who's done exceptionally well to come into the team when he does and do as well as he does. It's the third goal for Eddie Nketiah to get the hat-trick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I thought his role last season when he came in was underplayed. The end of his little spell in the team before Jesus got back, he did play in a couple of big games and missed a couple of... I remember the City game, he got a little bit of stick, missed a couple of chances. But up until that point, up until that week or a couple of weeks before Jesus got back, Arsenal remained relentless in their pursuit. And in fact, his goals to minutes was better than Jesus's when he came in last season. And although he might not be the answer to Arsenal's forward problems in terms of winning the title, an Aguero type, a Kane type, whatever you want to compare him to, I still think he's a wonderfully talented player to have on the sideline to come on and fill in because they've got that many games now in all competitions, and he's still a young man learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't like the negativity around this. Arsenal's forwards aren't good enough. I mean, they've got lots of players who score goals. You can win the league without having someone who scored 25 goals. And I think Eddie Nketiah has still got so much more to give.
I think the first goal that he scored, the touch before he put it in, a wonderful touch, and that's a touch of confidence as well. But what I want to ask you, Dan, is I think of a couple of players whose attitude to being on the bench was outstanding. Javier Hernandez and obviously Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Manchester United. And you can be on the bench at a big club and have the attitude to know your chances will come and you're just going to take them when they come, but you're not seeing yourself as an understudy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think long term you have to have a bigger picture. But in the meantime, he's a wonderful club playing Champions League football, pushing for honours. I was really first educated about the roles of substitutions by Gerard Houllier when we won the treble that year. And his biggest message through the whole season was consistently reassuring everybody that their time will come. Yeah. And actually, he kept producing these numbers in the meetings about the impact of our substitutions compared to anybody else in the Premier League. And that was the reason we got the success we did. Yeah. Okay, it's not the treble of United and City, I know, before anyone starts, but that year...
Don't listen to those. There's other people, Danny. Take
I
no
say
notice.
the same thing. Silverware is silverware. Big clubs win silverware.
The success... Every final we played, the subs had a role. Yeah. It was really incredible. And I was very much of the opinion before then, you've got your best team, and you got a few people who should know their place on the edge. But actually,
hangers on.
You know, we had Owen, Fowler, Heskey, Lippmann.
Wow.
You know, Gary Mack didn't start the FA Cup final, came on and influenced. He's brilliant in the UEFA Cup final. We had this wonderful ethos that was created by the manager, making us understand the. I think it's got better. I do think substitutions now don't necessarily feel like they're.
But the interesting thing about that season was that you just reeled off some quality names there. What Nketiah's big successes has been changing the minds of fans and actually journalists about his importance to the team. Because a lot of people thought he didn't have the quality to be able to step in when Jesus wasn't available. And I think that hat-trick, okay, you can talk all you want about the opposition, you still have to be able to do it. And he did it. The shirt doesn't weigh heavy for him anymore.
The other thing as well on that is the impact of having a quality player, even for someone like Jesus, behind you, knowing that if I'm not at it, I know that now he can do it.
You look, we saw two examples during the weekend. I thought it was really encouraging. Nketiah and Callum Wilson were competing to show, no, I'm the best backup centre forward in this league. You are, of course, not backup centre forwards. You're important parts of those teams. My magic moment, I think we can actually hear it.
Ball towards the back post. Pinnock arriving, and he heads the ball home. Chelsea switched off at the back. Mbeumo produced a cross from the byline. Pinnock came charging in. Chelsea didn't see him, and he's powered the header beyond Robert Sanchez.
Yeah, I mean, quite apart from, I love to see a great big bloke flying over the top of everybody in his way to head a goal in. Ethan Pinnock, he backs up every bit of my lifelong belief in the English football pyramid. Imagine when you're playing for Dulwich Hamlet. Now, I know their ground down there in Dulwich. Imagine when you're running out there with the sleet in your face in February, that someday someone will say to you, it is quite possible for you not only to be playing in the Premier League, not only to be playing against your local rivals at a huge stadium, and away from home, but you will score in the game as well. And for every footballer and young kid who's pulling on their boots and on a dark of night to go training and thinking, I don't really want to go out in this now. Think about Ethan Pinnock and what he has achieved. A combination of his own talent, his own determination, and no doubt some great coaches along the way. I thought it was a brilliant moment in the Premier League where we're so used to Darren to saying, this superstar's arrived from Scandinavia or from Eastern Europe for 50 million quid. There's Ethan showing that you can do it from any level of English football, because that's what the game's about in this country.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think kids have to be able to look at someone like an Ethan Pinnock and say, I could do that. You know, that is an inspiration for me, regardless of what team you play.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's a wonderful story. I love the guy's humility. He's played every minute. I've seen Brentford a lot. I don't think I've seen him have a bad game, by the way. But for me, I mean, I started in the old 4th division, you know, a little old club Crew. And so, although it's not quite the journey from Dulwich Hamlets, which is non-league, it's still the same principle where, you know, you learn your trade in those. And don't get me wrong, I think the attitude for those players down there, the ones who come through are the ones who think when they're playing for Dulwich Hamlets or Crew Alex, that actually this is an amazing platform, lucky to be here, and I want to move on. Not, I shouldn't be here, I'm better than this.
Absolutely.
And I think he plays the game with he's got a wonderful calmness about him, Pinnock. And I think he is a great example, Dan. It's a brilliant one to bring up for so many players. I mean, Wrighty started it years ago. Then Stuart Pearce is another one.
Pearce, Wealdstone, was it? He was at, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think Wrighty started even lower than that, didn't he?
Yeah, he started lower than that. Funny enough, he was saying, because I was talking to him today, and he was talking about the fact that when you start that low, nothing intimidates you, nothing bothers you, because you're playing against players who, it means everything to them. So by the time you get to the Premier League, you're enjoying the ride, if you like. That's why he is such an inspirational footballer, because so many people can identify with him. Likewise, you play down cute Crew, but there are players at that level who the commitment to be able to maintain a level of form and rise through the leagues with that same level of form, with that same down-to-earth attitude, with that same willingness to work. I think all of those things are vastly underrated in this sport.
Well, I think it's the lessons you learn as well. I know we're going off on one a little bit, but when you're talking about... So I'll give you some early examples. My first days at Crew, I'm edging into the first team, 16, 17. You take your own training kit home. You wash... There's no food after.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's a lie. There was soup. Soup and bread. No, there was, Dan. You could have some soup and bread before you got off home. I had to hang around anyway because I was still doing my jobs then as a YT, even though I was with the first team. And when you trained back then, we used to train we changed at the stadium. I mean, they ended up getting their own training ground, but for the first couple of years, you'd have to go all the way down to Shavington, which was probably 2 miles, mile and a half, 2 miles. And great little story. You used to have to get yourself down there, part of the warm-up. You could walk it, you could jog it, depending how early or late you were. And then you'd always get the minibus back. But our superstar player back then was Neil Lennon.
I remember.
And he used to, on occasion, go and drive behind the pub on the corner near where we used to train, hide his car behind there. But the manager caught him one day. And I'll never forget it because Dario actually left him out of the team on the Saturday. And he wasn't just our best player, he was the best player by a mile.
Wow.
Right.
And he just, and that was the day I thought to myself, if he can do it to him, I'm not, yeah. And it was it's the lessons you learn. Yeah, I remember breaking in Kenny Swain's boots for him, and getting blisters, but I didn't care because Kenny Swain was one of the first teamers. Absolutely. And he was a European Cup winner, and he's asking me to break his boots in. These are all the things that you learn, and you go into Hereford United away and getting there, or Doncaster, whatever Darlington, it was back then, and getting off the team bus and walking in, and there's a crowd gathering. It was like, whoa, this is amazing. Whereas if you're in an academy at Chelsea and you're from 13, you got these beautiful boots all the time, wonderful training kit put out for you. You got these pitches like carpets.
Really uncompetitive games to play in.
Yeah, and the food's there, beautiful, lovely cans. It's just that's not how you learn. No. It's not how you grow.
Okay, listen, we need to apologise to Manchester City fans there because in eulogising Ethan Pinnock, we used up much of the time we were going to do to praise their team.
We'll praise them. And
I will say as well, I like the way you mentioned there that both Ian Wright and Stuart Pearce, once they got into the top leagues, they were unintimidated by it. I know both those gentlemen. I can't think of anything that would intimidate them, if I'm truthful.